Good afternoon, dear colleagues. We continue our working day, and I give the floor to Colonel Andriy Lysenko, spokesperson for the anti-terrorist operation, with the latest from the combat zone in the east of the country. Good afternoon, dear colleagues. In the zone of the anti-terrorist operation, the most complicated situation remains around the city of Debaltseve. In this vicinity, we detect the messing of enemy machinery from the side of Stakhanov and Snizhne. Over the day, the Russian mercenaries have 13 times shelled the city and its outskirts from artillery, and they have 5 times tried to storm our positions. Within the framework of successful defense, our military have destroyed 4 enemy tanks. Also, the militants have, without success, tried to storm the platoon strongholds of the anti-terrorist operation next to Kamenka, Luhanska, Novogrigorivka, and Chernukhina. The assaults were repelled. The political aim of seizure of Debaltseve bridgehead is the desire of Russian curators of the gunmen to make Ukraine go to yield something to the bandits and sign the ceasefire on the truth on the conditions dictated by the Kremlin. According to intelligence, Russia continues to send to the occupied territory of Donbass the convoys with armaments, ammunition, and fuel. Over the 7th and 8th of February, the state border of Ukraine in Izvarina crossing point was crossed by almost 1,500 Russian military and over 300 vehicles, including self-propelled artillery, Grad rocket launchers, and so on. Our artillery is inflicting heavy losses on the enemy, including the machinery, and according to minimum calculations, this is only within the 10 days that passed, the Ukrainian artillerists have destroyed a convoy of machinery and armaments, and also combat and automobile machinery and personnel. Also, according to the intelligence yesterday, in the vicinity of road checkpoint 31, the anti-terrorist operation forces have destroyed an enemy tank. Recently, the Ukrainian military have made an in-course on the occupied territory and seized an enemy tank T-72. You can see this on the video from the military TV of Ukraine. Thank you, God, that I'm not a Russian, and be grateful, Russians, that I'm not a God. In the tank, documents and ratio packed lunch of the Russian army were found. The heroes who captured the tank are Andriy Kolynichenko, Sergei Khoroshkovsky, Volodymyr Wozniuk, Roman Semigorodsky, Sergei Kosakivsky, and Sergei Ivanovich. Previously, they have destroyed 2 enemy tanks, and I remind you that tanks T-72 is not manufactured in Ukraine. The very destructive factor is the sending to the occupied territory of Donbass another Russian so-called humanitarian convoy, with which the danger of further escalation of armed juxtaposition in Donbass is linked. In particular, through the crossing point Donetsk, 70 cars have entered, including 41 lorries and 21 sister tanks, fuel tanks. And through Matveyev-Kurgan crossing point, 103 cars, 73 lorries, 20 fuel tanks, and so on. All these facts testify to the absolute ignoring by Russia of Minsk agreements and diplomatic efforts of international community that are now being applied to de-escalate the situation in the east of Ukraine. Over the 24 hours, the enemy was conducting a native air reconnaissance with the use of drones. Our military have detected the flight of 4 drones in the vicinity of Sartana, Mariupol, and Severodonetsk, and another 3 on the border near Krasnotalivka. 2 of them have crossed the Ukrainian border. Over the last 24 hours, we lost 9 Ukrainian military and 26 got wounded. As a result of criminal actions of the gunmen, the situation on the occupied part of Donbass is deteriorating swiftly. According to intelligence, in spite of the systematic coming of the so-called Russian humanitarian convoys on the territory of Luhansk region, the occupational authorities cannot pay salaries and hand out packed lunches for the most of the local population. In Luhansk, which is temporarily controlled by illegal armed formation, while the everyday need for drinking water is 120,000 cubic meters, the supply only amounts to 70,000 cubic meters. Because of constant shellings and firings by terrorists, the crossing of transported individuals was temporarily suspended in road checkpoints Gnutovo, Stanично, Luhansk, and Shastya. As a result of shellings by pro-Russian bandits in Debaltseve and Avdiivka, yesterday 7 peaceful residents were killed and 3 wounded. Ukraine helps local residents on the front line cities. From Verkhnyotoretsk, that is on the contact line, the Ukrainian border guards have evacuated 2 elderly women who were in an extremely hard situation and state. The evacuation was conducted under the constant fire from terrorists. Over the recent days, to some cities of Donbass controlled by the Ukrainian authorities, huge volumes of humanitarian aid arrived, in particular to Artemivsk City Hospital. Help from Red Cross was delivered, including drugs, bandages, and wheelchairs. Also, humanitarian cargo was sent to Debaltseve, Avdiivka, and Trokhizbenka in Luhansk region. In the intervals in between the shellings, the experts have managed to renew gas delivery to Shastya, Peredilsky, Heivka, Petrivka, and water supply to Hirske, Zolote, and partially the city of Popasna. Over the 24 hours, the transit points, 427 people who left dangerous districts of Donbass went to the transit points of meeting of citizens deployed by the emergency service of Ukraine at railway stations in Slovyansk and Konstantinivka. The rotation of military personnel continues. Almost 30 Ukrainian commandos came back to the site of their regular deployment, and the 4th wave of partial mobilization is unfolding successfully. The Ukrainian military are being trained at the training center of the Academy of Land Forces, named after Petro Sagaidachny.
The specialists of the center developed some training programs that are based on the experience received during the ATO in the center. The privates and sergeants are are trained according to the military specialties. Besides, the armed forces of Ukraine received the humanitarian assistance from volunteers from Lviv, Volhynia, and Khmelnytsky regions, which has food products and the first part of the sleeping bags. The courses on improvement of Ukrainian tactical medicine continue. In the test field in Zaporizhsky region, the special training was organized in which 250 doctors, medical workers participated, as well as civilians who were executing the tasks in the zone of ATO. The training was organized according to the standards of NATO under the leadership of Ukrainian and foreign instructors. The program of training is adapted to specific of the wounds that Ukrainian servicemen see during the ATO in the east of Ukraine. On Friday, we demonstrated the map with the titles and the insignia of the units of the armed forces of Russian Federation that participated in the battles on the territory of Ukraine till September 2014. Today, we offer you the map with the updated information about occupants. After the briefing, the electronic version of the map will be distributed in social net and on the website of Ukrainian Crisis Media Center. That is all for today. If you have any questions, please ask. Ukrainian news. As to the explosion in Donetsk at the chemical plant, according to the information of ATO, who's involved into that? What are the reasons of this explosion? Maybe that was just a cigarette that was there, and that happens often at the plants where no one is responsible for the anti-fire work. They are just the barbarians, and that is the second case, I believe. In September last year, there was this similar situation. They have not corrected that. 2 hours ago, our correspondent informed that on the road Artemis-Debaltseve there are Russian tanks and armored personnel carriers. That means that Russians are in the rear of Debaltseve. I can tell you, Debaltsevsky direction, Debaltseve direction. During the last 2 weeks, preserved the integrity of defense, and there is no opportunity to get from the rear. If there are some tanks or any equipment, any vehicles, then tomorrow probably we will inform you what happened to it. Any other questions? Thank you, Andriy. Thank you. The next briefing on the situation in the ATO zone